Right. I think we are live. Okay. Welcome everyone to the Nobody Studio Inside Culture live show. My name is Sejal Thakkar and I'm the Chief Culture Officer. And today's show is one that you do not want to miss. Believe me, it's a rare opportunity to hear from a successful entrepreneur and investor and learn from his own experiences. David Meltzer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here to hopefully empower people, to empower others, simply to be happy.
Oh, I have no question I have no doubt that that's going to happen. So I met David when I was a guest on your show a couple of years ago that you were co-hosting with another nobody, Blaine Bartlett, who I also interviewed a couple of weeks ago on here. We had an incredible conversation. For those of you that are listening in and watching this right now, if you don't know David, I think everybody knows David, but in case you don't know his story, it is freaking incredible, right? And so David, I don't know if you know this, but you and I share a very important milestone in our own journeys that we're both recovering lawyers. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but yes, I love all recovering lawyers, most of all.
Yeah, right. But so David went on to be a super, I would call it mega successful entrepreneur. But then his story took a twist. He went literally from rags to riches. And so in his 20s, he was at the top of his game, right? He rose to the top of his game, became a millionaire. And then tell me I was reading this wrong, that he lost over $100 million. And then through hard work and, with the support of the incredible folks that he had around him, he was able to climb all the way back up. David, that is incredible. Was there like a key turning point in your journey? Because most of us we lose a few $1,000s and we're like, how do we climb out of this hole? Right.
Right. Well, losing everything's losing everything, but it is a far fall. And the irony of what I have learned is it was 2 years before I lost everything that really changed my life. It was my wife, while everyone around me was telling me yes, told me no. And anyone that had told me no in the past, I just simply said, you don't belong in my life. I hate you, whether it be my father, my best friends. But when my wife told me that she was leaving me, she wasn't happy, that I'd better take stock in who I was and what I wanted to become, it really hit home. And I realized as I sat there the next day and thought to myself, man, I don't hate my mom. I don't hate my dad. I don't hate my best friend. And I certainly don't hate my wife. I hated myself. And although 2 years into the paradigm shift of understanding gratitude and forgiveness, accountability and effective communication, inspiration, and realizing what I was connected to and through an omniscient, all-powerful, knowing, abundant, infinite, unified system of thought that loved me more than my mom. It took me years. It's taken me 17 total years, 15 since I lost everything, to really maintain a practice of gratitude, to maintain a practice of forgiveness and accountability and inspiration, and to be able to articulate it quantifiably to help other people do the same. That journey is what has allowed me to live in abundance. I tell people all the time, I went from living in a world of not enough, growing up poor with a single mom, 6 kids. I was a victim. Everything happened to me, to being a millionaire 9 months out of law school, multi-millionaire by my 30s. To live in a world where money bought happiness. I would buy things to be happy, more things to be happy, different things to be happy, buy things I didn't need to impress people I didn't like. But through the last 17 years on this journey, including losing everything, I have lived in a world where I am. I am happy. I am healthy. I am wealthy. I am worthy. And I've learned to figure out what I was doing to interfere with it. And this paradigm shift is one which I share through my books, my podcasts, my movies, my TV, my speaking, my coaching, all the content I do for free in group and one-on-one settings in order to empower people like you, who I know will empower 1,000 people to empower 1,000 people to be happy.
I love it. I love your mission, David. And I want to just, for anybody that missed, the 4 principles that David lives daily, right? He mentioned them: gratitude, empathy, accountability, and effective communication is the 4th one. I read that and I was like, and so his mission just to summarize it, is to make a lot of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of fun. And that is exactly what we're striving for, David, at Nobody Studios. And so, we always say this, that we're going to be defined by the people who are drawn to our journey. And so, I remember we talked about a little bit about this on when I was on your show about what inspired me. Now I get to ask you the same question of what inspired you to join the Nobody Studios journey.
Well, I was super excited to learn about the Nobody Studio journey because it was an abundant journey. And I talk about a world of more than enough of everything for everyone, a world of empowering others to empower others, a sustainable environment and community of people who want to help each other and know people who can help each other. And at its core, from the leadership to the management and leadership teams to the entrepreneurs, the investors, everyone had the same mindset, the same heart set, and also the handset, the extreme experience and knowledge. We've all, like you said, you and I are recovering lawyers, and all this situational knowledge and experience and dummy tax that we've all paid as well aggregates a community. It also compounds the community of like-minded, like-hearted, and like-handed people, and it accelerates the results better than what we can anticipate. So as I looked for alignment, synergy, supplemental values with what I thought was doing well today, what I see is stable today, and what I think will be doing well in the future, it's the people and the ideas at Nobody Studios that I wanted to surround myself with. And you had a great impact on me wanting to be involved, as well as other people who are close friends of mine and investors and participants in the Nobody Studio culture that has exceeded my expectations since I've been involved.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm humbled by that. We obviously share a lot of synergy on values, right? I'm huge into gratitude, empathy, accountability, all of that stuff. And so I like to invite people on the show because we want to give them an inside peek at our culture at Nobody Studios. And so just based on, you said some of these things, but for emerging entrepreneurs, right? And founders, kind of like yourself, you could speak from that perspective. What advice do you have for those folks looking to join Nobody Studios?
Well, I think the biggest piece of advice is find someone who sits in the situation you want to be in and ask them for help. And there's so many people that sit in these situations that you want to be in as a emerging entrepreneur, as someone who needs help, but also have the mindset of what value, what skills you have, what knowledge of who and what that you have, and your desire. And it must be a desire that you must be what you can be, because that's a common denominator of the people and ideas at Nobody Studios, is we all share that desire to enjoy the consistent, everyday, persistent, without quit pursuit of our own potentials. And for me, when I talk to emerging entrepreneurs and investors about Nobody Studios, I talk about those core values, but even beyond that, I talk about their ability to live in radical humility, to understand the difference between certain launch pads and accelerators, denominators and Y combinators that are scarce in their nature of living in a zero-sum game, comparatively to Nobody Studios. What is basis of the studio itself is living in a value add game of a group of people that are there to help one another and know people who can help one another, which once again creates that action, compounding, and acceleration of better results.
Oh my God, there's so much you just said right there. But before we go deeper on that, there is a difference. And I think it's important to highlight this for people, because a lot of the conversations I'm having right now are people who have ideas, right? They're entrepreneurs, they have these great ideas, but there's a difference between an entrepreneur and an innovator, right? And if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think people get those two concepts mixed up. And I think that's why Nobody Studios is changing the game in this playing field, because we are giving people who might be one or the other an opportunity to take their idea and bring it to them. We all got to make money, right, David? So there's a difference there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite speeches I give around the world is innovator versus entrepreneur. And
Mm.
the best example that I can give is one of the greatest franchises or businesses ever created, which they've made movies about in entrepreneurship, and that's McDonald's. Because Dick and his brother, they are great innovators. They created something called the speedy service system, which is the basis of all franchises in America and around the world. Amazing innovation, but they were average, if not below average entrepreneurs. And they were blessed with their innovation of the speedy service system that they created in order to effectuate a assembly line to create hamburgers at the highest quality with consistency. They were blessed to meet an entrepreneur, a man named Ray Kroc. And Ray Kroc was such an extraordinary entrepreneur that he was able to take the innovation of the McDonald brothers in San Bernardino, California, and create a multi-billion-dollar business over the years. In fact, he was such a great entrepreneur that he actually negotiated into his deal, not having any rights to the intellectual property of the service, the speedy service system, or the franchise itself name, that as he built the business so large that not only was he capable of building that business, but he was able to buy the intellectual property, the name, and the IP of the service, but he actually was smart enough to buy the rights to call himself the founder. And to me, this is the epitome of a difference of an innovator who deserves all that they can create out of their skills, their knowledge, and their desire. But in America, especially, the power of the entrepreneur to take it to market, to aggregate, accelerate, and compound it for the benefit. It is one of the core businesses that help the infrastructure in America. A lot of people don't know historically the impact that this entrepreneur had of providing safe, consistent places, every few miles along our freeway system that allowed people to travel more. At the core, if you study business, there is a huge difference between innovators and entrepreneurs. And like you said, to tie this all together, what makes Nobody Studios and the Nobody culture so powerful is that a lot of these types of studios only address the innovator or only address the entrepreneur. We actually leverage the benefits of both the skills, the knowledge, and desires of innovators and entrepreneurs to build extraordinary value. Once again, not a zero-sum game, either or, but a value add game that we live in at Nobody Studios.
Yeah, and we've got, the director of our Idea Lab, Min Bogata here, saying, great question, Sejal. The studio is the perfect place for both entrepreneurs and innovators to work together and bring their different skills to bear. I love this conversation because, again, a lot of the conversations I'm having, people, they're like, I've got 50 great ideas. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so what are you going to do with them? An idea is great, but you got to bring that to market, right? And that's what we're trying to do is help those people, surround them with, the resources to help them. So, based on your experiences, and you've dealt with so many different organizations, you've got your top keynote speaker, you've got books out, you're doing so many wonderful things, interacting with a lot of people. What's the number one mistake you see entrepreneurs making out there?
Well, two. One, they don't realize the heartbeat of a business, which is staying in business. And so the main priority or focus of a new business is to stay in business. You'll figure it out eventually, but they get ahead of themselves and they put themselves at jeopardy because they can't stay in business. And then it doesn't matter how great the innovation or entrepreneurship is, you got to stay in business. And then the second one is they don't ask for help. They think that humility means doing it on your own. Radical humility is knowing that you don't know. And the true humility comes in feeling in a value add world, okay, asking for help, knowing that if you receive help, you'll be able to help many others as well.
Yes, yes. Oh my God. I could talk to you about this for days, this conversation, right? But so let me ask you one more since I'm having the opportunity to pick your brain. I'm going to pick something a little bit deeper. So, you've probably heard this, this sort of proverb or quote before. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. right? And I think this is great to hang up on a frame poster somewhere on the wall, right? But just because you put good people together, it's not always the case that all teams are going to be high functioning or high performing teams together, right? So I know you talk about this topic a lot, how to create cultures of integrity and innovation. So what are some tips you can give the leaders at Nobody Studios? And I as a chief culture officer, my view, everybody at the studio knows, is that everybody in the studio is a leader. So what are some things for us to make sure that we keep integrity as one of our, top sort of values, non-negotiable values, and so that we can innovate in a way that no one has ever done before? What are some tips that you have for us?
Well, one is simplify the values. Notice as I write books and speak and coach and teach and do all the things that I do, I make sure that it's simple. And it's hard enough because the simple things to do are unfortunately simple not to do. But if you look at the core values of gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and effective communication, or the core mission of making a lot of money, helping a lot of people, and having a lot of fun, they're very simple. So the first thing is, let's keep it very simple, both the values, the daily practices, and the execution model. But the one that most people drop the ball in building a culture is that they assume that because they're simple, that everyone will get them immediately and implement them immediately. I can tell you from facilitating values, practices, and execution models for over 35 years. So some of the biggest companies in the world, like Samsung when I ran their phone division, like Westlaw when I ran their sales division, like Lee Steinberg Sports and Entertainment, the most notable sports agency, or Warren Moon and I started a global sports marketing company for over a decade. We stuck to simple values, daily practices, and execution model. But the one thing that I learned over the 35 years is that I am consistent with them, consistent in talking about them and putting them up and executing on them and practicing them. And so every meeting that we have, it starts with the values and the daily practices and the execution model that are simple and reminders, remembrances, and recollecting the culture of my business is, I think, dependent upon the simplicity of it, but also the repetition that most people leave out. They just assume, and you would feel the same way. If I went into the studios and talked to all the entrepreneurs and leadership there and said, here, look, you just got to be grateful, forgiving, accountable, and effectively communicate, be inspired.
Right.
I would leave and everybody, oh, I got it. I could come back by lunchtime and say, what were those 4 values? And 99% of the people wouldn't be able to name one. You need to continually go and make sure consciously they know it. It becomes subconscious in the 40,000 of the same thoughts that we have in our subconscious, but eventually it needs to be quantum, energetically and genetically inherited in their being. And if you can get to that level, then you truly have a culture of gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and effective communication.
Oh my God. Yeah, yes, yes, and yes. I hope people are paying attention. It's not a one-time deal, and it's not going to it's not going to change, your organization by just hanging the core values on the wall. We know that. We have to practice it, and we have to be consistent. And so, I think one of the conversations I'm having with people is that I think that when they're looking to invest their money into something like Nobody Studios, I think a lot of people are, let me just ask you this, because you're an early investor in the studio. You've been a supporter from the very beginning. What are some of the things what is some advice you can give people on what were some of the things that stood out to you when you decided that you were going to invest and support us? What were some of the things you looked at specifically about Nobody Studios that made you say, I'm definitely want to be a supporter in this, that you could give some guidance to people on that? And that'll be our last question.
Sure. So number one, I know my timing and risk tolerance. And so the people at Nobody Studios clearly indicated the alignment between my timing and risk tolerance. I also invest in people. And so I did a deep dive on the people involved, including you. And it came up so stellar and aligned with my values, my practices, and execution model. And then I looked into the sustainable practices of what was going on. And, all three for me were completely aligned and were rated. If I was going to put my normal 5-point rating, it got a 15 out of 15. It was aligned with my timing and risk tolerance. The people were all at the highest level, and the values, practices, and execution model, the sustainable business, was one in which I gave a grade of a 5 out of 5 as well. So those were the three criteria. And, I probably have more options, opportunities, and touches of favor than anyone of where to put my investment. So just the mere fact I invested in Nobody Studios should speak for itself. As they say back in law school, res ipsa loquitur. That which speaks for itself is Nobody Studios.
That's like scratched in my brain, right? So look, everybody, you got some great advice from, an incredible nobody, David Meltzer. We're the first crowdfunded studio. Do your due diligence. We're out there. We're talking about it. We're going to build 100 companies. We're going to need a lot of talent, a lot of money, a lot of influence. It's not going to be an easy feat, but we believe some of the best companies have yet to be created. So go to our Republic website, research us. We're putting everything out there and join our journey. Thank you again, David, for making time to talk with me today. I really appreciate everything and the compliments you gave me. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for signing on. Have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, team. Thank you, everyone.